What's up, fellow lords of gaming, and welcome back. So today we're jumping into some more solo leveling Arise content. Specifically, I want to go over the artifact system inside the game, the weapons and the artifacts. I think it's a really important piece for the game for you to understand, because it's going to be essentially how you're building up your character. I'm a little deep into the game. I'm at 47 now. I do want to point out to you guys that the reason why I'm going into artifacts now is because you really need to understand the nature of this game. And I'm going to say this in probably videos to follow. The game has a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of gates basically for you to break through. So for instance, when I finished off chapter 14, it required me to basically be level 47 to go into that chapter. Well, to go into chapter 15 and start doing that, I gotta be level 51. If you were looking at trying to race to get to the Shadow Monarch Rebel uniform and get the Cyberpunk uniform, well, guess what? You got to be level 53 to complete that chapter. So there's a lot of gatekeeping within the game where they have these big, huge jumps that there's just no way for you to overcome as a free-to-play player or a small pay-to-play player. You gotta really have to be like the whale of whales to basically skip through some of this content and basically make it pass. Even with me purchasing certain systems, there's just not the room to be in place for that. I have some other thoughts about the story and the side chapters and things like that I'm going to share in another video. For now, like I said, I want to get into your weapons and your artifacts specifically. So let's take a look at your characters basically that you have. So every character that you have is going to have a weapon that they are going to need equipped to them. Cha's weapon is the Sword of Light, and you could get it from a number of events that are currently going in the game. And you can also craft that weapon inside the crafting shop. So simply taking a look over here and going down to crafting, you'll notice that every SSR Hunter's weapon is available for crafting in the game. Now you will need to collect mana power crystals of their element type in order to basically craft those weapons, along with these Hunter exclusive weapon design tickets. You can get these from some of the game modes in the game. So for instance, you see here like manage weapons, play battlefield at a time. If you were to salvage weapons, you could get these from those salvage weapons, or you could play battlefield at a time and you'll get those as rewards as well. Or you can go to the weapons material exchange shop and you could get those from there as well. Kind of important that you note these methods of getting them, because there is a gate on these things. Like, trust me, there's a gate, which sort of answers my question for some other things that we'll talk about in another video. But you can see all of your SSR heroes are essentially here for you to basically get. So even Bayak Yunhu, his Howling White form is available for you to craft here. You just need to get the dark mana crystals and then some of these design tickets so you can do it. Be careful, because these design tickets are not as easy to come by as it may appear. You're gonna definitely be like hunting for these unless you make the purchase for them inside the cash shop. So like, I've been holding on to some of mine because I want to get Min his weapon, so that way I can unlock it and proceed with the game. So every weapon's there. Now you're also going to have to go about advancing these weapons, so it doesn't just end once you acquire the weapon. You've got to level up these weapons, and they have breakpoints. So every 20 levels with inside the weapon it looks like a maximum of 100 right now, you're going to have to limit break that weapon, and it's going to cost you these melding cubes. So for instance, for Cha's, hers is a holy elemental, so you're going to have to use those. You can get those from playing dungeon breaks, or you can get them from the weapons material exchange or the mana crystal exchange shop in the game. You can also, once you acquire these from like the dungeon breaks, which is probably the best way about going to get it if you're a free-to-play player, you'll get these cube selections, and you'll basically be able to unlock them from there. It's really grindy system. But you're also going to need these precision, or depending on what they are, these design tickets. And so you're going to need a few of these every level, basically all the way up to the 100. Like I said, there's a lot of gates, guys, a lot of gates. This isn't like just leveling up a weapon where, the same materials basically being used over and over. You basically have different type of elements and designs to basically do these. You're also going to have to upgrade the weapon or advance the weapon inside of the game. So you can see here, you start out at a base level for when you acquire that weapon, and then as you go as you max out that weapon from basically acquiring additional copies of that weapon, you'll be able to max out the skills on there. So you can see here, for 5 total advancements on Cha's weapon, it's going to increase her basic skill damage by 20%. And then when the user has a basic skill, increase the critical hit damage by 8% for 12 seconds on her ability. You want to pay attention to these because it's going to also tell you what type of skills you probably should be prioritizing in terms of using for a character. So for instance, with Cha, it's pretty easy to note that like she scales off of some of her skills. So you can see here, these are like basic skills, these 4 skills, and she's gonna basically use those skills quite a bit, especially like the dancer skill plays into her special skills. The Sword of Light skill plays into her special skills. So those are going to be increased elements. So you want to pay attention to the weapon, you want to pay attention to the skills, so that way you know what you should be focused on for that character in terms of getting them leveled up. All right, so those are weapons essentially. Every character at the SSR level seems to have a weapon, and even some of the characters at SSR seem to have weapons that they probably realistically want or need. It's just a matter of you choosing what they are. So there are hunter weapons in the game that you can acquire at the SR and the rare level, and you can equip those weapons based on, you know, the type of character that you're using. So for instance, you see here I've got like a steel longsword for a hunter. Elemental weakness damage is basically increased. You can see here I have like a blade, basic attack damage increase. I'm assuming at some point they're gonna have the specific weapons for these characters available as well. At least the codex would lead me to believe that. So yeah, I would take a look at that overall. So next up that we want to talk about is specifically equipping characters with artifacts. Now, I'm not going to do a video based on, at least at the moment, on what artifacts are the best artifacts for characters to basically wear. I can tell you for a fact that like really it boils down to like 1 or 2 sets in totality in the game, and that's pretty much it that are currently equipped in the game. So for instance, with Cha specifically here, I have some gear sets. You basically get gear sets from doing encore missions. Let me pull this up real quick for the game mode so that way I know. Yeah, so you're gonna unlock gear sets by doing encore missions, and so you're gonna be able to farm the blue venom fang Kasaka, the mage Forez, the gate Cerberus, and then the giant arachnid. Cerberus and the arachnid seem to be the popular of the two to basically farm. You'll see that the gear at the top levels is level 55, and then for him, and you see at the top level for 10 it's 55 as well. And then if you go to look at Kasaka, for instance, you can still get gear that's all the way up at 35, but that's the max level, and the same is true for Forez, so it's at 35. So one or the other, you're going to be either farming Cerberus or the giant arachnid. The giant arachnid has a heal mechanic that makes him a little freaking difficult to deal with, especially if you don't have Cha. She specifically has a skill that interrupts the healing ability for them. So if you do have her and you're leveling her up and you don't have Seo, then you could fight her. If you have Seo, then you can farm Cerberus and get the gear sets from him instead. So let's take a look at these gear sets overall. You can see there's a gear set specifically designed here to increase the power gauge acquisition rate. You'll start the power gauge by 50% and then increase the acquisition rate for an additional 20% for your team members. You'll notice over here we've got the Dragon Knight set, which basically increases the user basic attack damage and then increases the user core attack damage by 18%, and charges the core gauge as well by 60%. What essentially that is talking about is the way the skills rotate. So as you're using one skill, you'll notice that there's a little outline around it, and that'll be building up, and that's your core skill. So that way it flops from you using the basic attack to then using the core basic attack skill. It's very confusing, I know. Next up, you have your Black Lion's boots, which increases the user attack by 5%, And then the fourth skill set, when attacking, it ignores the target's defenses. I have this set currently equipped to Cha, and I have it equipped to Sun Jin Woo. I think this is one of the better sets and probably most universal sets across the game. It's definitely one of the sets that you should be farming for. Next up, we have the Almighty Kargalin set. I think that's what this one is called. For some reason, I feel like it's not called the Kargalin. I think those are just the boots that are called the Kargalin boots. Let me double check on this one. Whatever, Almighty Kargalins, right? So anyways, what the Kargalins essentially does is it increases your ultimate skill damage by 25% while also decreasing the ultimate skill cooldown by 40%. So for characters that want to get into their skill cooldown, like what's his name, Choi, this would be a good set for that, for him necessarily, but probably not in that same tier. You're gonna have a few characters, specifically Seo Jinwoo, I think that's what her name, Seo, and Emma Laurent specifically are going to be in most players' early rosters, and this is probably the best set for those two characters because they scale off of HP. They don't scale off attack. They scale off of their HP, so you really want to get that. You see, it also decreases the user attack by 8%, but it increases their team members' attack by 8%. So it's a bonus that they give to the other characters if you have the full 4 set equips. Now, from my understanding, this doesn't stack between characters, so be wary about that. Next up, you have the Palace Guard set. The user's shield effect increases by 30%, and then when a team member, including the user, activates a shield, it increases their individual damage dealt by 10% for 10 seconds. I don't think this has any real place inside the game. And then we have the hard leather set. The user's critical hit rate increases by 8%. The user's critical hit damage increases by 32%. So for a character like Cha, this is very beneficial because she scales off a crit hit rate and crit hit damage. So it's definitely a skill that you want to go into. Now, one of the pieces that doesn't seem to be appearing in here is inside the set, which is odd because it's not. There we go. I don't know. Did I skip over this over here with the boots? I did. Okay, there we go. Is the new Hunter gloves. So you can see here the user's damage dealt to enemies in the break state increases by 15%, and when attacking enemies that have elemental weakness, the break effect increases by 30%. So for a character like Seo or a character like Emma, who also seem like are break characters, or if you just looked at like Bach, he's like a break genius, then he would be good use for this for this skill, for this set. So of those sets, the ones that I think that you should be basically headhunting for is going to be hard leather, the new hunters, the holy, and then the black lions. Realistically, probably, you know, the other ones have more benefit, I think, overall in terms of the state of the gameplay that you're going to be doing mostly in mid to late game. I started to notice a dip dive. Basically, the effects of these don't seem to be as great as basically having like that crit hit rate, crit hit damage, basically maxed out by like one of those sets. And you know, the holy still holds value for certain characters, and then even the new hunter set basically seems to me like, anyways, like it has a little bit more value basically inside of that break state for characters that are basically supporting, not necessarily for your Sun Jin Woo. So what you're going to be doing essentially with your characters is you're going to be equipping these sets based on their recommended stats. If at any time you're confused about the recommended stats for a character, just click on the artifacts tab here and then click on the recommended stats, and it tells you right here specifically what you should be looking at for that character. So for Cha, it's crit hit rate, crit hit damage, and attack. So the sets that you basically look for here on your left should be within that vicinity. So here goes my attack. So she's getting a boost from her third stat that she benefits from, but you can see why she would probably benefit more from like the hard leather set where she's getting crit hit rate, blah blah blah, right? So take a look at that. The next thing that you guys are going to be farming is accessories. So you can see here a necklace, a bangle, a ring, and earrings. Now, when you farm this, you're going to be farming it from 2 different missions. I don't mind necessarily that it's 2 different missions. I just wish that it was more of the items inside of here so that way I could split farming up. So you have the Steel-Fanged Lian, who drops the necklace and the rings. And then you have Igris, who drops the earrings and the the earrings in the ring, and Kasaka drops the ring and the bangle. So from these sets inside of here, you have a couple of different ones. I really think, again, that there's really only 2 to 3 sets in here that you really should be farming for. So you notice that the Verdance bracelet increases the user's skill MP consumption. This is problematic overall. You get a 5% damage dealt and then a decrease of basic skill cooldown, but this seems like you're building into, you know, having that skill MP available to you. And then you notice that the effect also increases the damage effect to 18% and the cooldown to 18%, but you're really building into this, and there are more valuable stats, at least when you look at that overall. So it might be good for certain characters not. When you look at like the Aquamarine bracelets, this helps you for if you're tagging characters in and tagging characters out, so you get the increased attack effect basically from doing that. I think for some of your weaker characters, especially like your SRs that you're really just carrying on a team, maybe for breaks or something like that, this is a good thing, but not in the tops. Then you've got like your Beast bracelet, and this, you can see this one, when landing a critical hit, the user has a 25% chance to increase attack. You can increase the activation rate to 50% and the attack increased by 1.6 here. This is a really good set. The skeleton set is a really good one as well. You notice when the user has HP 50% HP or less, their damage dealt increases by 15, and at the 4 set effect, it goes from 50 to 70 and 30%. So that's like, am I taking some damage? Yeah, and then I can basically do some damage, do a whole lot of damage back to you. You also have the Behemoth bracelet set, which has like an opposing type of effect on it. So basically, instead of me taking the damage, right, it's the enemy taking the damage. So when attacking enemies with 40% or less HP, it increases the user damage by 8%. And then it says here, HP conditions change to 70% and damage increases effect increases 20%. But you notice the difference here, right? One is basically you doing the attacks on something and making the condition happen. The other one is you taking some damage so that way you can have the effect happen. They're almost like 2 peas in a pod, depending on maybe your playstyle. But the problem with this one is essentially the increased rates. So this one almost like, hey, take some damage, bro, and you'll get 10% more attack basically from taking some damage, especially at the 70. So I think this one is more beneficial because there's 10% more just for you taking the hit. Not really difficult to get down to 70%, especially in this game where everything is, the floor is lava, and you're just dealing they're dealing DOT, and it doesn't even matter whether or not you're good at the evasion mechanic or not. Next up, you have the Red Eye bracelet, and you can see here it increases the user's attack by 5% for 4 seconds when you land a critical hit. An attack increase effect can now stack for 4 times. Now, I did think that this was a nice set. I just got it, so I had to equip it because I haven't gotten plenty of the other sets. They seem to be throwing this one at you, bar none. So have at it. Like, it is what it is. And then you just basically have the bracelets for those effects inside of there. It's weird that they did it this way. Like, I wonder why they split them up, because the earrings and the rings are the same exact things. They're just split up. Why they just couldn't give you all 4 being able to drop from one boss instead of split, and especially with just having 3 keys basically inside there. A little bit weird, almost like it incentivizes you to basically run 3 and then run 3, right? So like, I'm gonna buy some more keys every day so that way I can run 3 and 3. Now, speaking of ways to run additional runs, if you go into the shop and you go down here to the exchange shop, and you take a look at the weapon exchange, not the weapon exchange, but the mana exchange crystals, you'll notice that you can purchase encore keys and instance dungeon keys as well from here, 2 per day. So it's going to give you 2 sets per day. So make sure that you're using those, because it's going to basically cost you these low tier crystals, which are 356 inside here, and then you can advance those as well. So you basically definitely want to make the purchase for those. So outside of this, what are you essentially looking at? You're running these missions over and over so that way you can hopefully equip yourself with better gear. As you get that gear, you need to be aware of something. Basically, you're leveling those up to either stage 10, so that way you can test it out and know if it's something you want to use. And then you're going to basically leveling up to 12, 14, and then after 14 is where it begins like this new acceleration, because now you are going to need essentially another way to level these up. Is going to be another gated type material inside there. So of the sets, like I said, I think the more beneficial sets that are in the game is definitely the hard leather, the new the hard leather, and the Black Lions set. Those are probably going to come up time and time again in terms of you playing the game. And then very specifically honed in on some characters is the new Hunters and the Holy set. If you take a list of all of the characters basically in the game from SR to SSR, you're going to notice that these are pretty much the sets that you're going to basically be running. Like the Destroyer set or the high ranking demon set, whatever you want to call it. This one does have some play because the power gauge acquisition for specific characters like Choi and other characters that like to use their ultimate a lot, or their powers. But yeah, I don't know, we'll have to see. And you'll also notice the Almighty Kargalin set as well for that increased ultimate skill damage. So pay attention to those sets. I do have to warn you, it definitely becomes a very oh, it pisses me off, to be perfectly honest. It becomes a bit of a grind fest, and in terms of gatekeeping, time locking material so that way you can move on. I understand it from a certain perspective, but I don't understand necessarily the game being built around the giant leaps between the sections. So like going from level 47 to 53, that's 6 levels, and you're not getting XP but from so many places in the game, makes it really hard to progress in the game instead of just grinding to get to those levels. So you have to see where you sit at for those. I'm going to do individual videos for each of the characters and break down their skills, their usages, and things like that. But I wanted to give you guys an overview of the weapons and artifacts in the game as they're presented, and give you a better give you at least an insight on where you're going to be grinding these things from overall. It's going to take you some time, especially if you're free to play. Beware, like getting to 47, there's no way I would have got to 47 so quickly if I wasn't spending some of the money on the game. You're probably, as a player, going to be stuck somewhere around 36 to 37, 40-ish area, maybe for like 2 or 3 days before you can actually move on to the next level. And then a lot of it's basically going to come down. Like I screwed up and messed up something on my Army of Shadows, and so I'm deficient probably about 10,000 combat power basically from there. So but we'll talk more about those type of things in another video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please do me a favor, like and subscribe. It really helps bring you additional content to the game. I would love to be a content creator for the Netmarble program, the partner program, but I need additional subscribers to the channel. Help me hit that 1,000 mark, and that way I can bring you guys additional content by joining Netmarble, and also share some rewards with you from joining the content creator program. Until next time, guys. Peace.